It was a good run, or maybe not so much. Government has done an incredible amount of damage to humanity and the planet over the millennia. If we ever hope to evolve to a truly higher level of consciousness in this world, government, and its newest incarnation being sold by the pseudo-intellectual overlords of the communitarian United Nations and World Economic Forum, governance, must be abolished and thrown to the trash heap of history, because changing the suffix of the word somehow makes it more palatable to the proletariat, who are ultimately being controlled and enslaved by these technocratic used car salesmen, passing themselves off as visionaries, leaders, and saviors of the planet and humanity. Excuse me while I go vomit. If you look up the term democide, you'll see that death by government was the greatest cause of unnatural death in the 20th century. Over 250 million people succumbed to premature death at the hands of their government last century alone. And those figures do not include deaths from war. Perhaps it's time for humanity to take a very close and critical look at the institutions and mechanisms of societal management to which we are giving our power on our watch and not holding in check. Because after a year like 2020, it is beyond obvious to anyone with any ability to think at all that government and all of the illegitimate power it wields and imposes on supposedly free human beings is public enemy number one of the people, with their media lapdogs being a very close second. After what has been done to humanity in the past year, anyone who can possibly argue that we should allow the people and structure of government that did what it did to the world to remain in place isn't paying attention and knows absolutely nothing about our true history. Not a single dissenting voice or any voice of reason or challenge has been allowed to be heard by the masses concerning the science or even evidence of a pandemic at all. Censorship is at an all-time high in America, as well as most supposedly democratic Western nations. Government has become exactly the form of tyrannical rule which has been the cause of numerous revolutions throughout the dark history of our species. Yet, we're told by them and their controlled mouthpieces that the current form of government, the Democratic Republic, is the epitome of freedom and representation when it comes to the people it supposedly serves. And that would be historically among the greatest slaps in the face, because it is anything but. With the word itself an ideological foundation of government, we've already questioned its telos, so let's now look at the etymology of the word. And there are many who argue and debate this breakdown of the word, but when you look exactly what government does, through its manipulation of information, its obfuscation of facts, and its claims of national security for classifying anything top secret that just might possibly embarrass it or allow the population to make more informed decisions, the Latin etymology is actually quite appropriate. And those Latin roots are the two words gubernare and mente. Gubernare for govern, meaning to control, and mente for the root word mental, or of the mind. Thus, government derives itself from the very words which mean to control the mind. Again, who could argue with the fact that government does exactly that with its citizens? And that is a system that is just ripe for corruption, crime, and deception. So again, perhaps it is time to completely rethink, reimagine, and redesign what government is and what government should be. I will start by proposing that we discard the word altogether. Even if we want to discredit the controversial meant part of the etymology because of the debate and those who claim it is only a suffix, it still means to control. And to control implies a certain amount of power over something that is inherently unequal in proportion to whatever is being controlled. And that imbalance of power is a primary violation of natural law, because it implies that the imposition of will from someone in power over another is justified. It is not. And if we want to create a societal management system that is fair, does not impose its will against those it is instituted to protect, and does solely what it is chartered and constituted to do, we need to rethink the entirety of what government is. For this not to have been done over the past 2.5 centuries is beyond my ability to comprehend. But I suppose everyone thought what we had was just fine, or they probably thought it would be too much of an undertaking to attempt to change it. However, We are now at a point in history where government itself has become so damaging and dangerous to our very existence, let alone freedom, that this must be done and no more time can be wasted in bringing forth viable, workable, and infinitely better options to the populace. Power, it's been said, abhors a vacuum. Someone or something always seeks to fill a power vacuum with a new social order in times of great unrest, and it is usually the most nefarious and deceitful who end up filling this void. Lessons from history need to be closely heeded when moving forward and creating a system that will allow this vacuum to be satisfied in a proper manner. So, we must ask, wherein should the natural state of power be held? Is it not with the individual itself? Shouldn't a new system be created so as to restore power to the individual and ensure that it is retained with the individual? Because if power is bestowed upon a group of people to which an entire society is subservient, do we not put ourselves into the same type of situation once again? And yet, I see so many people out there putting forth similar types of plans as if they themselves should be the one to rule over the masses, or that this same type of system would operate correctly if we just got the right people in place. J.R.R. Tolkien warned us all of what would happen when someone controls the soul ring of power as well as the consequences of the quest for such power. So, perhaps we need to look at the idea of power itself to solve this age-old problem. Power has almost invariably been abused and very rarely used with the respect, discernment, and restraint it requires. Wherein then should power lie, and if solely with the individual, what would be bestowed upon those who would operate a new type of societal management system, if power isn't sufficient for anyone to hold over another without violating natural law? Well, we could back up to what all of us possess within our own lives and chosen jobs or careers. And that is simply called responsibility. What if we actually created a system in which personal responsibility was the label possessed by those in position of management or administration? And what if abuses or derelictions of those responsibilities resulted in dismissal from said positions immediately, just like every other job in the world? Why should we have to wait 2, 4, or 6 years to remove someone who is not doing a good job and who has the opportunity in the meantime to lie to their base to get reelected despite gross irresponsibility and breaking of promises? The election cycle of the current system has proven to be wasteful and beyond ridiculous, and the very structure of representative government an oxymoron. What if power were removed from the equation for good? Would the world begin to look like a more equitable place? I tend to think it would look vastly different. So, we replace the idea of power with responsibility. Then what? What happens when someone or a business aggresses or trespasses against someone else's rights, property, or nature itself? Well, in that case, there would be a very strong common law court system to handle all disputes between individuals and businesses who violate their charter against nature or the people. In this type of society, the court system would have the only real power to enforce judgments upon people for grievances, and only after a fair and just trial is held. Also in this society, all maritime, admiralty, and codified law would be abolished, banned, and never allowed again, as that is the color of law that has purposely been implemented to aid in the enslavement of humanity over the past 2 centuries. All we need are common law courts based in natural law to settle any and all disputes that may arise between 2 or more parties. If you know anything about the law or the system of debt slavery currently controlling things in the world right now, I think you're beginning to see the immense power in the system I am only just beginning to describe here, and how it would unleash the individual to finally attain a level of freedom we have never before seen in history. Constructive fraud would be a thing of the past. Because what we're essentially looking at here is the full restoration of individual sovereignty, the restriction of public servants to pure responsibility, and what would become the firewall that would ensure that the public service administrators could never encroach upon the rights of the individual ever again without exposing themselves to severe personal consequences. It is an ironclad system of societal management that restores rights and responsibilities to where they have always and ultimately do belong, and that is solely with the individual. This is what it means to completely rethink, reimagine, and redesign the societal management system. While everyone out there is attempting to use the same old top-down command and control system of power that always has and always will be corrupted, I have completely thought outside the box in designing a system that gives pretty much the majority of people have asked what they would want from government. And most would answer to just be left alone. And that is exactly what this system does, while giving the people exactly what they expect from public service personnel and administrators. You see, the power paradigm has always been the problem in society, with the reins almost exclusively being taken by the worst personalities and most narcissistic in society, those with the insatiable thirst to control and dominate others. Not the types of peoples we want to be ruling over our lives. But that is why government has become what it's become. The checks and balances have never been in place to keep these types of people from infiltrating and destroying societies from within with their delusions of grandeur and psychopathic tendencies for conquest and control of other people, lands, and resources. Domination has always been a characteristic of the despot, and we see it in even the so-called democracies of the Western First World nations of today. This model needs to be exposed for the fraud and destructive force it is once and for all, so that these types of people can never again rise to positions of illegitimate power. Under this new system, there would be no legislative branch because it would be redundant under a common law system. The laws in this society are defined by nature itself, and only two commandments are needed. One, the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. In other words, do no harm, but take no abuse. And two, don't steal. That second one is there to reinforce the first and remind everyone that every violation of natural law is one form of theft or another. When we violate natural law and it only affects ourselves, it is called a vice, and you are robbing from yourself that which, if following the laws of nature, would remain intact. And vices are and should be solely personal learning experiences, not labeled crimes against the state for which you can be fined or thrown in a cage. When we violate natural law and it affects another or others' rights, the common law courts would come into play to settle the dispute. It's a very simple system to understand, and morality suddenly becomes important once again. Future videos will cover the operation of the common law court system as well as the justice, punishment, and most importantly, reform system. But again, those systems would all abide by natural law, and there would be no unjust decisions and penalties. It would be a system of reform with the ultimate goal of making the aggrieved whole again and the aggressor a reformed, remorseful, and productive member of society. If this sounds simplistic, it is designed to be and shouldn't be any type of system that the average person couldn't figure out on their own with a little bit of effort and common sense. Many of the problems we have in today's world are simply because society has been made overly complicated by design to purposely confuse people into seeking the counsel of experts and professionals for every little thing because they can't figure out the solutions on their own. But again, this video series is also designed to get people's minds working and thinking about solutions outside of the current paradigm that would show them a world of complete freedom and prosperity they most likely can't even imagine in the way the world is currently operated. Once a critical mass is achieved of people who want to institute this form of natural law society with an honest and efficient public service administration system, like-minded individuals and thought leaders in the natural law and personal freedom community would convene to work out the details and create a new Declaration of Independence from the current system to which everyone could sign, and a constitution for a new form of natural law republic that could ultimately be implemented in every nation around the world to replace the dying system of command and control domination that is currently destroying everything it means to be human. And I think the ideas shared within this video should get people very excited about the kind of future we could build under such a structure of equal power, rights, and responsibilities for everyone.